All right, today we're going to be talking about dairy. Now, what is dairy? Dairy it is found in the products of milk from mammals. So anything from a cow, a goat, sheep, whatever kind of milk that it is that you're drinking. But it is found in products like milk, cheese, yogurt, whey protein, butter. All of these kind of things have dairy in them. Not eggs. Eggs are produced from chicken. Chicken is a bird, not a mammal. Therefore, it's not dairy. I'm not sure why people think that it is. But moving on, 65 to 75% of people in the world are lactose intolerant or have some kind of intolerance to dairy as a product. That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, symptoms of having some kind of lactose intolerance are acne. Acne is a massive one. It is linked that it is actually research behind how dairy will actually increase acne in people that have any kind of intolerance to it. Having stinky farts, bloating, diarrhea, all these other kind of things, they're all reactions or symptoms of having some kind of intolerance to dairy. Okay, so to get further into it, we need to have a little bit of a look at the dairy industry itself. Now, from 1950 to the year 2000, the dairy industry actually halved by threefold, but it increased 3 times in milk production. So to do this, basically they did it to cut costs and to increase the amount of milk that was being consumed and produced. But to do that, they had to actually have more cows on one farm. Therefore, there was no room for the cows to just be free range and grass fed. They were all in these small confined spaces, pumped in, squished in next to each other. They also had to change their diet. So they were fed grains, they were fed protein, they were fed IGF, which is a hormone that they were injecting the cows with. Now, IGF is a synthetic hormone that is actually proven in humans. If we have too much IGF in our bodies, it increases our risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer. Now, why would we consume more things that have IGF in them if it is proven that it increases our risk of these things? Anyway, we'll come back to that. Now, as you know, for example, when a mum is pregnant and her breast milk is going into the baby, we know that whatever the mum is consuming, the baby is therefore consuming. It's the same if we're consuming a cow's milk. Now, whatever the cow is getting, whatever's going into the cow is going into us. So that IGF, that's going into us. The grains going into us. The stress from the cow, because it's in such small spaces, that is going into us. Now, these cows are unhealthy. They're not eating their natural diet. They're getting sick because there's so many cows in one small space. So because they're getting sick, they're injecting the cows with antibiotics. Now, you might think this is not a bad thing. We need antibiotics, right? Antibiotics are good. They help us when we're sick, which is true. But if we're having lots of antibiotics just by our diet regularly, then when we do need antibiotics, when we are sick, we become more antibiotic resistant, which means that we won't be able to actually utilize the antibiotics when we need them as much as we would if we didn't ever have them in our diet or in dairy. Now, let's have a little look at actually dairy or milk, for example, as itself. Now, we need an enzyme called lactase to break down lactose. Now, lactose is the sugar in dairy products. So you might have heard of lactose intolerant. You're intolerant to the actual sugar lactose. So lactase breaks down lactose. Now, when we are a baby, this is my baby. Kind of looks like a jelly bean. And this is my human. Let's just call that Khan. Okay. Now, when you're a baby, you actually do naturally produce lactase. Now, so our bodies actually produce lactase to break down lactose from our mum's milk because we need the nutrients from the milk and we need to be able to grow. But when we are from 2 to 5 years old, depending on the person, you stop producing this enzyme lactase. You stop producing it. But if we keep consuming lactose, then we have nothing to break it down. That's when all these issues start to occur. Now, if we have a little bit of a look at the actual protein structures of of milk or of dairy products, we have whey and casein. Now, you might have heard of these in proteins and such, and it's a bit of a fad in the gym industry. We take whey protein to help with our recovery and help our muscle growth. But one thing we're going to look at is casein. Casein is known as a slow-release protein to help us gain weight if that's your goal, or recover, or whatever it is. But casein is a very similar molecular structure to gluten. So if you have an intolerance to gluten, then you're very, very likely to have an intolerance or a similar reaction to casein as a product. So when you consume milk, obviously you've got casein in it, your body's going to react the same as it would to gluten. Now, there is a bit of a thing in nutrition that we do need milk for calcium, for B12, all these vitamins and minerals. Yes, milk does have a lot of these products in there. Dairy does have a lot of these nutrients and vitamins, but you do not need you do not need to consume milk to get these. You can get all of these things in lean protein, you can get them in vegetables, you can get them in proper other food sources rather than dairy. It is not a necessity. It is not something that is needed in your diet, but you might not have an issue with breaking it down. But I would really consider, if you are going to consume dairy, please think about where it is coming from. Make sure that they are grass-fed cows. You know the source and you know where they're coming from and how the cows were treated. Happy cows, happy life.